In the 1,980 seconds, America believed one thing very strongly: that Wall Street was powerful, that it was protected, and that the people running it were untouchable. Millions of Americans trusted the stock market with their savings, their pensions, their retirements. Every morning, newspapers printed numbers that decided who would live comfortably and who would struggle for the rest of their lives. But behind the polished offices, behind the suits and luxury cars, a quiet crime was unfolding. A crime so massive, so carefully hidden, that by the time it was exposed, billions of dollars were already gone. This was not a robbery with guns. No vaults were broken, no alarms were triggered. Instead, the crime happened through phone calls, whispers, and secrets passed behind closed doors. This is the true story of America's billion-dollar Wall Street scam. And it began during one of the most dangerous decades in financial history. The 1,980 seconds were a time of excess. Money was everywhere. Greed was celebrated. And Wall Street had become a battlefield where only the ruthless survived. Young traders made fortunes overnight. Corporate raiders tore apart companies for profit. And insider information became more valuable than gold. At the heart of it all was a simple rule. One rule that everyone on Wall Street knew, but few obeyed. If you had inside information, you could not trade on it. But what if no one was watching? Inside skyscrapers in New York City, men in tailored suits discovered something terrifyingly simple. If they knew about a merger before the public, if they knew a company was about to collapse, if they knew bad news before anyone else, they could move millions of dollars in seconds, and no one would notice. Or so they believed. The scheme didn't start big. At first, it was just a few quiet trades. A phone call here, a tip there. A stock bought hours before the news broke. But when the profits came in, fast, clean, and effortless, something changed. The rules stopped mattering. Entire insider trading rings began to form. Corporate lawyers, investment bankers, traders, even executives at major companies. They shared secrets like currency. Deals were made in restaurants, private clubs, and luxury apartments overlooking Manhattan. They spoke in code, used payphones, destroyed notes. To the outside world, they looked like successful businessmen. But in reality, they were stealing from the entire American public. Every illegal dollar they made meant someone else lost. A pension fund, a retirement account, an ordinary American who believed the market was fair, and the theft kept growing. Millions became hundreds of millions. Then quietly, billions. But Wall Street made one fatal mistake. They believed they were invisible. They believed regulators were too slow, too stupid, too afraid to challenge them. They believed the system would protect its own. They were wrong. Somewhere inside the government, a small group of investigators noticed something strange. Certain traders were winning too often, too perfectly, too consistently. Stocks moved before news broke. Patterns repeated again and again. It wasn't luck. It was information. And once that realization hit, the clock started ticking. Because the moment insider trading rings are exposed, they don't collapse quietly. They implode. Friend turns on friend. Partners betray partners. And the most powerful men in finance suddenly face prison. What began as whispers was about to become one of the largest financial investigations in American history. And the first arrest would shock Wall Street to its core. In the next part, we will uncover who first cracked the code, how the government secretly watched Wall Street, and the man whose arrest sent fear through every trading floor in America. If you think Wall Street crimes are victimless, what comes next will change your mind forever. By the early 1,980 seconds, something felt wrong inside Wall Street. The stock market was booming. Profits were soaring, but beneath the surface, the same names kept winning again and again. Not once, not twice, but with a consistency that defied chance. Inside the Securities and Exchange Commission, analysts began to notice the pattern. Certain traders always seemed to buy just before good news. They always sold just before bad news. It wasn't genius, it was knowledge. At first, the suspicions were quiet. No accusations, no raids, just numbers on paper that didn't make sense. But the numbers didn't lie. Someone was feeding Wall Street secrets, and someone was getting rich from them. The problem was proof. Insider trading doesn't happen in daylight. It happens in whispers, favors, and trust. No contracts, no emails, no paper trail, just voices on telephones and money changing hands. To catch them, investigators needed something they'd never had before. They needed someone on the inside. The break came from an unexpected place. A small-time trader, smart, ambitious, but reckless, made a mistake. He talked too much, and when the government quietly approached him, they gave him a choice that had ended many criminal empires before: prison or cooperation. He chose to talk. What he revealed stunned investigators. This wasn't one corrupt trader. It was a network, bankers leaking merger plans, lawyers passing confidential documents, executives sharing bad news before it became public. And at the center of it all were men who believed they were untouchable. The government moved carefully. No arrests, no headlines. Instead, they listened. Phones were tapped. Meetings were watched. Patterns were mapped. Every trade was tracked like a fingerprint. And the deeper investigators went, the clearer it became. This wasn't greed. This was a business model. Inside luxury apartments and private clubs, information flowed freely. One call could make millions. One tip could destroy a company. And Wall Street rewarded silence. No one asked where the information came from, as long as the profits kept coming. But every criminal organization has a weakness. Someone always feels cheated. Someone always feels exposed. Someone always believes they deserve more. And in this world of expensive suits and quiet betrayals, paranoia began to spread. Traders started watching each other. Phones stopped ringing. Meetings were cancelled. The sense of invincibility was fading. Because when the government is listening, no secret is safe forever. Then came the moment Wall Street feared most. The first indictment. Not a nobody. A respected name. Someone whose arrest sent shockwaves through trading floors across New York. Phones went silent. Offices locked their doors. Men who once laughed at regulators suddenly hired lawyers. The hunt was no longer theoretical. It was real. And once the first man fell, others began to panic because they knew something terrifying. The government didn't just know what they were doing. They knew who was next. In the next part, we will reveal the rise of Wall Street's most infamous insider, how greed turned partners into enemies, and the man whose downfall would become a warning to an entire generation. Because when fear enters the room, even the richest men start to confess. Once the first major arrest hit the news, Wall Street changed overnight. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Meetings were cancelled without explanation. Phones were no longer trusted. Because one terrifying question filled every trading floor. Who's listening? The government had learned something crucial. Insider trading couldn't be proven with numbers alone. They needed voices, real conversations, real confessions, real fear. So they turned to the most powerful weapon they had: wiretaps. Court-approved, silent, and relentless. Phones inside offices, phones inside apartments, phones inside luxury car. Every call was recorded, every whisper mattered, and what investigators heard was worse than they imagined. Traders spoke openly, not about stocks, but about secrets. Mergers discussed like casual gossip. Bad earnings shared before dawn. Companies described as dead before the public knew anything was wrong. And every conversation had one thing in common. They all knew it was illegal. As the recordings piled up, panic set in. Men who once laughed at regulators now whispered in hallways. Lawyers were hired in secret. Documents were shredded. Phones were destroyed. But it was too late. The evidence was already sealed. Inside one recording, a trader laughed while describing how easy it was. "They'll never catch this," he said. Investigators paused the tape. They didn't laugh. They labeled it Exhibit A. The arrests didn't come all at once. They came quietly. A knock at the door, a sealed envelope, a court date, and each arrest made the next one easier, because fear breaks loyalty faster than prison ever could. Men who had protected each other for years began turning. Partners testified against partners. Friends betrayed friends. Executives pointed fingers downward. Every confession added a new name. Every name led to another arrest. Wall Street had always believed it controlled the rules, but now the rules were controlling them, and for the first time, money couldn't buy silence. The public was stunned. Newspapers printed names Americans recognized. Successful investors, respected executives, men who had appeared on television as experts. Now they appeared in courtrooms. But the greatest damage wasn't legal. It was psychological. Trust in the market was shaken. If Wall Street could cheat this easily, who else was lying? And still, the investigation wasn't done. Because at the top of the pyramid, the biggest names had not yet fallen. The government was saving them for last. In the next part, we will reveal how the courtroom battles unfolded, why some men chose prison over testifying, and the verdicts that changed Wall Street forever, because once the truth is spoken aloud, there's no way to silence it again. By the time the cases reached the courtroom, Wall Street no longer looked powerful. It looked exposed. Men who once controlled billions now sat silently behind defense tables, wearing the same suits but without the confidence. Outside the courtrooms, cameras waited. Inside, America watched. Prosecutors didn't rush. They let the evidence speak. Wiretaps played aloud. Phone calls echoed through the room. Private conversations never meant for anyone else were now public record. And the effect was devastating. Euros heard traders spy about secret deals. They heard laughter after illegal profits. They heard how easily the system had been manipulated. No theories, no speculation, just voices. Defense attorneys tried everything. They claimed misunderstandings. They blamed ambition. They argued that everyone did it. But the recordings told a different story. These men knew the rules. They chose to break them. As weeks passed, verdicts began to arrive. Guilty, one after another. Each conviction sent shockwaves through Wall Street, because these weren't minor penalties. They were prison sentences. For the first time in modern history, high-level financial criminals were being treated like criminals. No special treatment, no private exits, no quiet settlements, just consequences. Some deaf and dumb broke down. Others remained cold, refusing to show regret. But all of them understood the same truth. Their careers were over, their reputations destroyed. The sentences were severe, years behind bars, massive fines, permanent bans from the financial industry. The message was clear. This era of unchecked greed was ending. But the damage had already been done. Billions were lost, trust was broken, and Americans realized something terrifying. The system they believed in had been rigged by the very people paid to protect it. Wall Street changed after that. Compliance rules tightened, surveillance expanded. The fear of wiretaps never fully disappeared. Every trader remembered what happened, because the biggest punishment wasn't prison. It was the knowledge that Wall Street would never feel invincible again. In the final part, we'll explore what happened to the men after prison, how these scandals reshaped financial law, and the lasting warning this era left behind. Because history remembers one thing clearly: when greed goes unchecked, it always leaves fingerprints. When the prison doors finally closed, the story didn't end. For the men convicted in the biggest Wall Street insider trading scandals of the 1,980 seconds, life after prison was a different kind of sentence. The money was gone, the influence had vanished, and the world they once controlled no longer welcomed them back. Some tried to rebuild quietly. They moved away from New York, changed routines, avoided the spotlight. Others never recovered. The loss of status proved more painful than the loss of freedom. Because on Wall Street, identity is everything, and theirs had been erased. But the true consequences weren't personal. They were systemic. After the scandals, the American financial system was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Greed had become normal, and silence had allowed it to grow. Laws were rewritten. Surveillance increased. Phone calls that once felt private were now potential evidence. Trading floors learned a new language: compliance, oversight, accountability. Fear became a regulator. The government sent a message that echoed for decades. White-collar crime was no longer invisible. Power no longer guaranteed protection. And the market was not above the law. Yet, even today, the story still matters. Because the temptation never disappeared. Money still moves faster than morality, and secrets are still valuable. Every modern financial scandal traces its roots back to the lessons of the 1980 seconds. Insider trading didn't vanish. It went underground. Smarter, quieter, more cautious. And that may be the most frightening truth of all. The greatest crimes don't announce themselves. They blend in. They wear suits. They speak confidently. They promise growth and opportunity. Until the damage is done, for millions of Americans who lived through that era, the memory remains. A time when Wall Street fell from grace, when billion-dollar lies were finally exposed, and when trust once broken could never fully return. This wasn't just a financial scandal. It was a warning, a reminder that systems built on trust are only as strong as the people inside them. And when greed replaces responsibility, collapse is only a matter of time. If this story taught us anything, it's this. The most dangerous crimes are the ones that look legal, and the most powerful thieves don't wear masks. They wear confidence. Thank you for watching. If you value real stories, real consequences, and the truth behind power, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this documentary. Because history only survives when we choose to remember it.